Hey guys, I'm Steven from Hard Artifact Media, and what is a motherboard? Well, this. This is a motherboard. But today, we're actually going to take a closer look at it and going to go over a quick run over of the different types of connections and what they're used for. So starting from the top of the motherboard, we have a ATX 12 volt 8 pin power connector. We use this for the CPU power. And then moving on over, we have 1, 2, 3 headers. One for water pump, one for the CPU optional, and one for the CPU fan. Now, if you're using just a regular air-cooled heatsink for the CPU, you will plug that into the CPU fan so the motherboard can detect it and monitor it, and it will let you know if it's not working, and will either shut it down, give you a warning, or won't even let you boot it on. If you're running a AIO or a custom water loop, you will plug the pump into the water pump here. That way the motherboard can monitor that as well. CPU optional is if you're running a custom water loop and you have two different loops going on in the system, you can use this as an extra fan header for the CPU. And then moving over, we have the Q code reader. Now, not every motherboard will have a digital Q code reader like this. Some will come with a BIOS speaker, and this will pretty much beep at you the different warnings, and you can use this to help troubleshoot if you do not have a digital readout like this one. Now, you can find the codes in the motherboard manual, like if I can find it, for an example, you got all these different Q codes, and it tells you pretty much what the problem is, and you can usually look up how to fix that. Moving on down, we have a chassis fan header. Now, not every motherboard will call it a chassis fan. Some will call it system fan, and some will call it case fan. But as you can see here, it's called a chassis fan. Now on this board, we have 1, 2, 3, leave that one, so 4 as far as I can see on this board, 4 chassis fans. Now, can usually get an extension for these, or some cases will have a fan header module built into it that you can connect more and just use less. You pretty much can connect more fans depending on what you got. Moving down, we have a 24 pin power connector. Obviously, this is for supplying power to the motherboard to power all these components. And then on down, we have a USB 3 header. You can use this to connect if your case comes with a USB 3 connection like this. You can connect that to that and have your USB 3, if the case has it, working. Now this board comes with 2 USB 3 headers. Now we already got one over that. We now have going onto the DIMM slots. Now this board supports DDR4 RAM. So as you can see here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can fit 4 RAM sticks. Now, the orientation of the RAM does matter. Some boards will have a little printout on the board itself telling you which slot to use first, or the motherboard manual. Now, if you're using 4 sticks, you're going to use all 4 slots. If you're just using 2, you're going to use the 2nd and 4th slot. Now, if you're just using 1, you're just going to use the 2nd slot. Now, moving on over, we have the CPU socket. Now, as you can see here, I already have a CPU in here because this will be being put into a build I am doing here in a little bit. It has a retention arm here, and the board itself tells you right here what socket type it is. Now, do be careful to make sure you match the CPU socket to the actual socket type on the board. Not all boards have the same socket, especially if you're using AMD. They use a AM4 socket. I believe they use another type of socket, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Intel usually changes their sockets up. You have, this one is an LGA 1151. I believe they have an LGA 2066, and so on and so forth. Just do keep that in mind and just check your CPU socket type and try to match that with the motherboard socket type that you're getting. Now, underneath here, this heatsink, we have the VRM. Now, what the VRM does is it pretty much just helps regulate the voltage coming from here to the CPU, since the CPU works at a lower voltage than this is supplying. And you can usually, as you can see here, we got capacitors right there, and then we got the chokes, and the MOSFETs are actually underneath the heatsink itself. Now, to tell how many phases you have, you usually can tell by counting the number of chokes you have right here. I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So counting the chokes, this right here is a 10-phase VRM. And I'll be going more in depth over VRM in another video, and a couple of the things on here as well. Now, moving further down, we have a T sensor right here, 2-pin T sensor. Now that's for, you can plug another cord in there, just a T sensor cord, and that helps you monitor temperatures and other things that the motherboard itself does not monitor. Not everybody uses it. You might not use it, but if you do use one, do keep that in mind, that this board is it right there. And again, if you're not sure where anything on the motherboard is, just always check your motherboard manual or user guide, because not all boards are created the same. So moving on down the board, you can see here we got 1, 2, 3 by 1 PCIe slots, and 1 by 16 slot, 1 by 8 slot, and 1 by 4. Now, some older boards will have a mix between the PCIe and the PCI slots, and there's another slot older boards will have, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But the standard is now PCIe slots, since that's pretty much where everything is going to. So I will also be making another more in-depth video on that. So going further down, in this row here, we have the AAFP. This is pretty much your front audio connection, front panel audio connections. And then you have your Thunderbolt header right here. So if you have anything that needs a Thunderbolt and you want to plug it, you can use that. So we also have a start and reset button. So this lets you pretty much start and reset the computer straight from the board itself. And then you have your clear CMOS. Now, clear CMOS that'll pretty much wipe everything on the BIOS and reset the BIOS. Usually you'll use this for overclocking if you have to troubleshoot it. And then you have your... Alright, so coming from the CMOS, or the clear CMOS, we have the TPM. header. That's the trusted, can't remember what this P stands for, module. I can't remember, but it's used for extensions that help store keys and security things. And it pretty much will help with making your network security a lot better. If you have anything like that, you would use this header. Going on to the ROG extension headers, this is for really anything that you would buy separately other than the motherboard that you can use for these two headers right here. This is pretty much for Asus Republic of Gamers. Not all motherboards have this, obviously, because not all motherboards will be Republic of Gamers, as you can tell from this right here. Obviously, this is MSI, not Republic of Gamers. Then moving on, we have a USB 2 header right here. This is where you plug in USB 2, your USB 2 cords. I believe this only has the one header, if I remember correctly. You can buy a USB 2 extension that you can connect to this and plug more USB 2 cables into. Moving on, we have that second USB 3 header we were talking about earlier. We have another chassis fan header, and then here we have the front panel connectors, which are these. You know, your power switch, reset switch, your HD, the LEDs, and then your power thing connectors, and they will plug in right here. They have a little diagram there that you can use to plug them in, or you can look into your user manual to get a better picture of how to plug those in. Moving on, we have your SATA ports right here. You got 2, 4, 6, 8, I believe 10 of those. And these are used for your SSDs, your hard drives, optical drive, anything that really needs a SATA data cable to go to it, you would connect it here. Here you have a M.2 slot. These are used for your M.2 NVMe SSD drives and stuff like that, like the Samsung 970 Evo Pro or 960. You would put in here. Now, this motherboard only comes with the one, and then some will come with two, and then I believe on the smaller form factors, like the ITX and stuff like that, they might have it on the back of the motherboard, which this one does not. But do keep that in mind when picking out your motherboards. And then here, right here, you have an LM2 mode connector. This won't pertain to most people. You would use this if you were to be doing overclocking using liquid nitrogen to do world records and stuff like that. And this pretty much just lets the board know, hey, you're going to be doing stuff with really cold temperatures. And that's what this basically just goes, hey, we're doing really cold stuff, and prepares the motherboard for it. Now, I believe that's pretty much all the things, all the connectors and different types like that most people will be using on their motherboard, and that is used in the computer. Now, there's something I did forget to mention that I'm having to record after the fact, is the rear I/O. Now, the rear I/O of the motherboard is basically where you put all your connections from your peripherals to the actual computer itself, other than the front I/O on the case. Now, this is directly built into the motherboard, as you can see. Now, starting here, we have a PS2 mouse and keyboard connector. Now, this is for like the legacy stuff, like you have like an old mouse or keyboard, that you can use this connector to use those if you so wish to. Now, we also have two USB 2.0s, 2.0 USB ports here, which are completely fine. They're a little bit slower than the USB 3 connectors here and here. Now, moving on, we have I believe this is just a BIOS reset or refresh. Can't remember which one, but not all motherboards have these. And if you do have one, do look into your user manual to make sure exactly what it does, because I can't remember off the top of my head. Now we have two more USB 2.0s, and then we have one display port right here, and then one HDMI. Now, if you're using a discrete graphics card, that'll have display ports on it as well, and you'll be using those. You'll connect your monitors to those. If you're using a onboard graphics on your CPU, you can use these, or if you don't have a graphics card. Now here we have a USB 3 Type A and a USB 3 Type C. And then moving on, I believe this is a gigabyte Ethernet connection, but I mean, don't have a gigabyte, it'll still work. I mean, you can transmit up to a gigabyte worth of data, followed by the two USB 3.0s. Now, here we have the 7.1 audio ports, inputs. And you see mic, audio in, and then you have if you're going surround sound, you got these connectors. And then, yeah, so that's the rear I/O. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I/O standing for input and output. So there you go. Well, alrighty, that was it for this episode of What Is. Now, do keep in mind, this was just a quick rundown of the different types of connections and things on the motherboard. Now, if there's anything I forgot, which I'm pretty sure there is, comment down in the comment section below. So, hey, we're all informed, and this is, a learning experience. I'm learning, and hopefully you're learning as we go on the way. Like this video if you liked it, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want more. Thank you.